Hi, welcome to Draw Tip Tuesday. My name is Koosje Koenen and I'm here to guide you on your creative journey. And speaking of journeys, I just came back from Greece with the Blue Walk. And the Blue Walk is an organization that creates amazing travel experiences. So I traveled with a group with the Blue Walk to Greece. We've been on several islands and every day I have been teaching workshops. So we were with a group of artists who were amazing and so much fun. For me, this was the first time that I did a tour like that, and I really want to do more of this because it has everything. Drawing every day, traveling, good food, great company. What else do you want? Well, everything was about drawing during this workation, as I like to call it. And so I filled a whole lot of sketchbooks, which today I want to give you a tour. And hopefully by giving you the tour and showing you the drawings that I did, hopefully that inspires you. Maybe not to travel. I mean, traveling might still be kind of tricky, but at least to capture moments in your sketchbooks, because that is really what I have been trying to teach the people who were on the trip, to capture moments, to create these memories in your sketchbook, and particularly in their travel sketchbook. But you can do this in your sketchbook daily, weekly, well, anytime. Okay, let's dive into the sketchbook tour of today. I was already halfway into a sketchbook, so this is the night before, and here I am traveling again for the first time in quite some time. I was so used to traveling and then we all weren't. This is my first drawing in the streets of Athens. And here I did some practicing for the class I would do the next day with my students. Lunch, this you might know. Blind one-liners, a warm-up session with the students. And here's a demo I did for a one-liner of a building, and after that I did some one-liners of the students who were working on their assignment. And we went on the boat, which was a long ferry ride, and we had a portrait party on the boat, which was really fun. This is my cabin on the boat. Drawing of our view from the hotel. At the first day, everybody was tired. The approach I took was to first paint the sky, then the sea, because those were really standing out, and then the mountains that were in the back. But before that, I did all kinds of mark making with a white crayon, so that the village that we were looking onto would actually really stand out. So all the white of the crayon was resisting the watercolor, and then I added layers of watercolor, more crayons. You can see that I used white crayons for the shimmering of the water. It was a good exercise to start with because we were all tired and big details were not what we needed at that moment. The view was kind of overwhelming, but just by adding washes of watercolor to start with and then adding more, that was a good approach, I think. Drawing I did right after lunch. Another demo drawing. This might be the favorite in my sketchbook. I love this drawing so much. Again, I told them to first draw the sky, but with pen. So we went to look at the negative space of the sky, and then from there also the ground, so that way you already have a whole frame of what you want to draw. And a person was sitting here, one of my students, she was sitting here, so I included her. And once I had those two big shapes in, I could capture the perspective without thinking too much about it, and I could add all these smaller bits and pieces. And while my students were working on their piece, I added more watercolor, more layers, and I think the dark watercolors really work well with the bright white of that building, and it pulls the viewer's eye. some people of the group at dinner. Again, the group, while we were getting a tour in an essential oil distillery. And that's it for this book. I'm going to travel back in time because I had another smaller sketchbook with me as well. I did this on the plane to Athens. They are not wearing masks just for a few minutes because I drew the faces while food was coming. After that, the masks were back on. Dinner in Athens, cup of coffee in the morning in Athens. Here I was trying to find a good location for class. I didn't go to this place because it was way too busy. A tour that we did in a place where they make carpets was very interesting, and it was so fun to draw the whole group. Quick one on the corner of the street where our hotel was in Athens. A visit to the Acropolis, of course. And then we are on the ferry again to Amorgos, where later on we had the portrait party. Sardines are quite favorite for me, so I had to draw them. This was early morning and everything was sort of blobby. My pen ran out of ink. The cats I was drawing were like kind of sort of monsters. So this represents the way I felt that morning. We went to visit a monastery which was up high in the hills. So beautiful. So I took time to paint it. The balcony of my hotel. Wonderful moment I took drinking coffee after I went for a run back here and then swam here. Ah, it was such a good morning. Because of those cats a few pages ago, here, I decided I need more practice drawing animals. And there's a lot of cats in Greece, so I did my best. Practicing for a demo for class. And here we are back into that essential oil distillery where I quickly drew the setup while we got the tour about how essential oils are made. It was very interesting. Oh, and for some reason I put this the wrong way up, but I used a map from the hotel and then painted a little peek of my view. Let's move to the smaller format. I have a bigger one coming up. At lunch, my hotel room on the ferry with a beautiful sunrise. And on Naxos, I saw these mini carnivals, which, I don't know, it gives such a typical feeling of these places at the sea. I just had to draw it. Went on the bus, and here I'm practicing for a class where I use the foreground as a frame for the background. And then I drew the same scene just loosely with pen and watercolor, and I love this character. I practiced a little bit more because I needed to find the right locations for my students to sit and do this exercise. And here we are again, waiting for the ferry to go to Santorini. This is in Santorini at lunch. And believe it or not, this is the last day already, where we went to Vira town, had a fantastic, I wrote down dinner, but it was actually lunch. And this is the day that I travel back again. Flight 1, flight 2. And then back home I am cooking Greek food. I have one more. Are you still there? I sure hope so. This started as a drawing demo in class, and then I took time to finish it while the others were also drawing. And here we are sitting in the shade. This is at the beach. This is another class where I taught people to do a sketch collage of the village we were visiting. And then I took that assignment for myself that evening. It started with this drawing, but I was kind of tired. It was getting dark. I couldn't see what I was seeing here. I couldn't see what was on my paper. So I kind of abandoned the drawing that I started and then decided to make it a whole sketch collage with a lot of writing. It also taught me that it's okay to not finish a drawing if you don't really love it. Even though it still gets a lot of attention, I think it's okay the way it is. And otherwise I would have overworked it, or would have just worked on it while I was uncomfortable, sitting on a ledge. It was getting dark, I was hungry, so I went to eat. Another day, another class, drawing boats. Instead of drawing the whole thing, I started with just detail on the boat and grew the drawing from there, just shape next to shape next to shape. And it's tricky to draw boats because they move all the time, but the students did an amazing job. Sunset on Amorgos. And here we are on the boat to Naxos, the next island we were going to visit. Drawing of a church right after a very, very hard rainstorm. And well, as I said, there's lots of cats in Greece, and we were kind of harassed by a very scabby cat. Here's a little bit of preparation I did for the class that evening. This came from the toilet, which is kind of weird, but I just liked it. And there were some art journalists in the class, so I took their example of just taking anything and sticking it in your sketchbook. I kind of like it. So we did gesture drawings. This was quite a tricky class, but it's important. People ask me about how to draw people, and this is kind of the start of it. Really trying to capture quick gestures and then maybe add some details. And then that evening I had dinner in a restaurant, visiting another village on Naxos. This is a drawing demo I did where I used the foreground and the background in two different colors and two one-liners. And then I did another background in black. Coffee with the locals. Here I practiced for that day's class. I started with watercolor, just looking at the repeating things that I saw. So it started with this, and this, and then all the blues, and then some green here, and some green here, and some green here. And then adding line, and then I noticed that this blue was supposed to go there, but it all worked out, and then I added more watercolor to finish it. A visit to Akrotiri, an ancient village where everything was covered in ashes after a volcano erupted, and we can actually still see what that village looked like, even though it was so many years before Christ. A poolside painting party. These are my students all working on their assignment. Pretty good place to do an assignment. This is the last day on Santorini where, again, we were focusing on drawing people in the scene that you're drawing. So that was also quite the challenge, but we had a lot of time for it. And my portrait was drawn by Susie, one of the blue walkers. And here is a drawing I did while I was waiting for some really good food. And then the last day we all sat down and did some contemplations of the trip in our sketchbooks. And I drew my students, all of them. And then when I came home the next day, I did this. I had been writing highlights of the trip, and I could use those to make little drawings of and describe what we did. So I have like a graphic novel kind of feeling of everything that we did. And then I also wrote down all the classes that I taught my students. And then back home, familiar view, feet up, on we go. For me, looking back at these pages is so great. I can feel the breeze on my skin. I can hear the chatter around me. I can just really get the moment back that I was in while doing each drawing, which is quite different than when you would take a picture, a photo. Now I'm doing this while I am back in the Netherlands. I'm doing this in a different way. The adventures are quite different, but still I am capturing moments each time I sit down to draw. So I hope you will do the same. And next week I will be back with another video with a tip and hopefully some inspiration for you. If you like my Draw Tip Tuesday videos, check out my Patreon page because you can support me to keep making these videos. Link is below the video and I will see you next week. Bye now!